Should be coming through now. Excellent. Looking good. Okay, we're about 1 minute and 40 seconds till we roll out here. Sounds good? Good. We've got the audio rolling through. Perfect. About 90 seconds till we roll out. We're going about 1.8 watts per kilogram here. Nice and easy, and we'll be getting into our topic here in just a moment. Just need to get a couple things shared out, but again, thanks for joining us. Give me a moment here. All right, we're about 40 seconds or so here. We're gonna roll straight into the pen. We've got about 14 riders. Welcome everybody, welcome. We've got a really interesting topic today. We'll be talking a little bit about what is in your bottle and what should be in there and the different things that we've probably have consumed, and just to get a little bit better understanding of what's going on in there and what we could use those for. So I am just gonna get everybody organized and out the pen. And then we will make sure that we've got all the audio going. It's about 10 seconds to go here. Right on. All right. Here we go. Nice and easy, everybody. I am going to get us going. Looking good, looking good. Doesn't look like my in-game is there. That looks good. Okay, nice and easy, nice and easy. We got someone going off the front here at 11 watts per kilogram. Need to dial that back. All right. Okay, looks like we can get started here. Let me pull up our slides for today. Okay, so welcome in the Feedzone. This comes on at 5:45 Fridays. That's right now, 8:45 Eastern and 13:45 GMT time. So mark that on your calendar if you're interested in watching this or seeing this in the future. But I'm glad you're on board today. We've got a really interesting topic. But let me just introduce myself. My name is Jason Flores. I go by JFlow on Zwift. So if you ever see me online, give me a ride on. I'll give you one back. But yeah, let's see here. So a quick medical disclaimer. The only purpose of this live stream is to educate and to inform, and it's no substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. This live stream is provided on the understanding that it does not constitute medical or any other professional advice or services. Some of the goals of the live stream today are going to be to present current articles in the media covering food and hydration and how it relates to endurance sports, and to open up a dialogue for viewers to ask questions and to get advice about their experiences. All right, on to our topic for today. Our topic is actually brought to us by Precision Hydration. It's a company based out of the UK. It actually is a company that specializes in finding out endurance athletes' exact amount of, let's say, salt or sweat composure in order to get the correct amount of hydration or salt electrolyte combination for their sport and their training. So really interesting. So definitely check out their website at precisionhydration.com. I will post that here at the end. But the topic that they had brought up that I wanted to bring to you guys was a topic about the different types of sport drinks, when to use them, and the topics kind of surrounding that. So it's going to get a little bit sciencey. I'm going to try to break it down. I've done my best to kind of make sure that it can make this easy and understandable. So we'll get started here with what is tonicity. Some other topics are going to be isotonic drinks, hypertonic drinks, hypotonic drinks, and just a quick summary of kind of how this all ties together and how we can use it. A lot of those terms could seem very kind of off-putting or something you may have not heard of, but I'm going to see if I can break that down for us today and give us a better understanding of what each of these are. All right, so let's talk a little bit of tonicity. And what this means is it talks about a solution and it's how it's similar to the things around it. So in this case, what we're talking about is, for example, in a drink, the amount of carbohydrates in that drink of that concentration, how that compares to what's in the body or in the blood. Okay, so concentration of the carbohydrates or the drink that we're drinking as compared to what is the concentration of solutes inside the blood. So a quick graph here or image, I'll blow this up in just a second. Sports drinks typically can be one of those three that I named earlier. There can be hypotonic, which means the concentration is lower than in the blood. It could be isotonic, which is the same concentration, or it could be hypertonic. It could be higher concentration. So what I'll do is I'll go through each of these and I will talk about how we can use each to our advantage, what we should be using on, off the bike, and what each can be used for in relation to each other. So a quick blow up of the graph there. We've got a hypotonic where you see the body is in the orange part here, and that's the amount of concentration that's in the body. And the hypotonic solution shows that there's less solutes or less stuff on the outside. So a little bit easier to kind of see here. Isotonic is about the same amount on both sides. And then hypertonic is hyper or more amount of concentrate on the outside versus the inside. We'll see how this relates and we'll bring it all together here at the end, but just keep this picture in mind when we talk about each of the three here. So what is tonicity, continuing on that, and how it really affects how much energy, essentially in our case, carbohydrate that a solution can deliver. So depending on if it's isotonic, hypertonic, hypotonic, it can affect how much energy can be put into the body through the blood or absorbed in the blood. So it's how quickly that it can be absorbed into your blood or replace fluids that you're losing, whether it be hydration or if you're trying to fuel. So those are two different topics that we'll kind of parse out here. So let's start with isotonic drinks. So isotonic drinks, as we talked about earlier, that's similar concentration in the blood. That means equal inside and outside. So a lot of the traditional drinks that we're told or that we talk or that we use are quote unquote isotonic, and that they're supposedly similar in concentration to our human blood. That means things like Gatorade and that sort of thing, and kind of those more commercial drinks that you'll find off the shelf are typically quote unquote isotonic. The reason why I say quote unquote is because of the fact that with further research, what they have found is a lot of times these percentages end up being a pretty wide range of measurements without getting into the numbers, but a lot of times it's found that a lot of times they have more carbohydrates in the drink than they actually need. So what you usually find is that there's about 6 or 8% of carbohydrate in these drinks, or percentage of carbohydrate in these drinks. And it delivers about 1.5 to 2 times the amount of carbohydrates than most hypotonic drinks do, meaning those are the ones that are less concentrated. So it's a good amount of carbohydrate for these drinks. If you've noticed, and if you've used things like Gatorades or Powerades, I'm thinking the ones here from America, but those drinks tend to feel a little bit on the heavy side. And a lot of times you'll find that athletes will dilute those drinks in order to get a better taste, a better mouthfeel, because they can't continually drink this heavy drink over the time or over the course of an endurance ride or training ride longer than an hour, for example. So where these isotonic drinks are useful because of the high carbohydrate percentage are for shorter duration, higher intensity exercises where carbs need to be quickly put in, and it's more important than warding off dehydration. So if you're not worried about hydration at that time, what we're looking at is that you're able to use these kind of drinks to get carbohydrates in for that high intensity, short period, and we're not worried about dehydration because the event may be short. Okay? So on paper, it may sound really great. We've got a lot of carbohydrates on board. I'm doing a short event. It should be good. But the problem is what I mentioned earlier, is that you can get gastrointestinal upset, meaning that your stomach can hurt. You could feel bloated. You could just feel overall just heavy and uncomfortable. So especially in the cases of hotter conditions, where your sweat rates are very high, it can drive the drinking rate faster. So instead of drinking your normal drink rate, you may be drinking a little bit more than normal. This can definitely cause a problem because then the carbohydrate amount that you're putting in ends up being higher as well. And then when combined with any food that you have, for example, on the bike, you're drinking this 6 to 8% carbohydrate, you're also putting in like real food, let's say bars, rice cakes, that sort of thing, then this can also increase the amount of carbohydrate and essentially can lead to too much carbohydrate on board to try to digest. And essentially that will end up with you, your body trying to move the blood towards digesting versus doing your sport or doing whatever you're trying to do at that moment. So next we'll move on to hypertonic. And if you remember hypertonic from the image is that the solute or the concentration is higher in the drink. So everyone has probably had one of these if you've done a post-recovery drink or something like that. And so in this case, the concentration being higher, these are formulated typically with a lot of carbohydrates and typically with a good amount of protein. So this is good in an amount when you want to get a lot of things into the body and you're not worried about hydration. So typically we don't use hypertonic drinks on the bike just because the amount of strain that it puts on the gut in order to digest this. And so it's anytime you want to put, like, let's say, post recovery, you want to get those carbohydrates back in, get those proteins back in, that's where a hypertonic drink can be very good. The only issue is that the fluid intake, it's if you're still trying to hydrate at the same time, you're not able to do that in this drink. So there are some fueling strategies where the carbohydrate, you're trying to fuel all from the bottle. And that means that the majority of the carbohydrates are in your bottle. They may be more concentrated and that so forth. And what you'll find those athletes do is they'll have like a super concentrated bottle and then they'll make sure that they're hydrating separately. So a lot of times, if you've heard any of it in the Feedzone talks, we like to think about hydration and fueling separate, so you need to make sure that you're hydrating to the correct amount and then fueling separately and keeping those things separate and not trying to do them at the same time. Because you could see, as if you're just trying to drink this hypertonic or this super solute solution of your drink to get those carbohydrates in, let's say every hour, you may not get enough water in order to hydrate yourself. So at this point, it's very important to kind of balance that if you're going to use this type of drink. And people do. But the other way to use it also is, of course, post-recovery, that sort of thing, to get lots of nutrients in at one time. So there's a couple ways that these hypertonic drinks come in. And one of it is osmosis, kind of a big word. But what it is that the solutes can move into the system depending on a gradient. But the problem with the hypertonic solution is that since the concentrate is higher on the outside, it's actually going to pull water from the body to dilute that to then bring it into the body. So what happens is there's a net movement of water outside, and that's where you may get that bloating feeling or feeling like you're taking on, or like you kind of have like a full gut feeling with these sort of things. So there is a balance when you're using these type of fueling strategies to make sure you're getting enough water into the body or enough water in with these hypertonic drinks to digest it, so that the body isn't having to shift its focus from pedaling the bike and that sort of thing to making sure that it can digest this food. So what happens is essentially you're dehydrating yourself if you are not hydrating separately from your hypertonic fueling or during the day during your normal post-recovery stuff. And so making sure you're hydrating separately. It could, because it is moving water or blood out of the blood into the gut so that it can digest. All right, so a lot of times it's best to stick with this type of hypertonic drink exclusively at times when you're looking to get calories in as fast as possible, when hydration, again, is not a priority. So post-recovery tends to be the best, but sometimes there are situations, for example, triathletes or long endurance athletes that have no availability to fueling strategies otherwise, can definitely benefit from this sort of drink. All right, then we'll move on to what's called a hypotonic drink. And this drink is a drink that has lower concentration than in the blood. And so this is a drink that's specifically used for hydration, and something definitely on the newer end that riders, both in the Peloton that I've done research in and in the science, are showing really good ways to hydrate yourself. Meaning, as we separate our food, hydration in the bottle, food in the pocket, and you've heard me say that a couple times, that making sure that you get the right amount of hydration in the bottle, this is the type of drink that we're talking about. So these drinks tend to be absorbed very easily into the blood, and they are very quick. They deliver the least amount of carbohydrates, so it is important, again, that you're fueling. But again, you can definitely fuel outside of the bottle. All right, so they're usually a low concentration, like I said. They're usually run about a 4 or 6% solution. The drinks that you've made here that are on this level come from companies like Osmo Nutrition, Scratch Labs, as well as SIS from the UK. So a lot of their drinks are either iso or hypotonic, meaning that they're less than 6%. And what this allows it to do is that it will go into the gradient. It will bring the water into the body much more quicker, especially when the preferred goal of the drink is hydration rather than delivery of a large amount of energy into the body. So we're not trying to get carbohydrates in this bottle, we're just trying to maximize hydration. And so it's really important there. And so one of the tips here, or how a hypotonic drink works, and kind of bringing everything together, is that having this little bit of glucose and a good amount of sodium, and that's one thing we haven't talked on, but we've talked about in other topics, can help facilitate or help move things faster as far as absorbing into the body. And so having that 4 to 6% is a right amount, because there's two ways that things move in. And the three things that we talked about, being hyper, hypo, or isotonic, all talks about a gradient, meaning two different sides of the concentrations, either less, more, or the same, and it moving across that gradient. That's called osmosis, or things moving across a gradient in order for it to get into the body. The second way to move is when you have things like glucose or sodium on board. There's a second way to get it channeled with the right percentage, and typically found at that lower percentage, around 4 to 6% of glucose, around 30 grams a bottle or less. You can use a second transport system to get hydration or water in, and that is with glucose and or an amount of sodium. So easily we've talked about preparing bottles here at home, a 4 to 6% solution with about a quarter teaspoon or less of like a Himalayan salt. Those two combinations of a homemade brew can definitely make a difference, and you can feel a hydration difference. And these are the same sort of combinations that you'll find in the brands that I mentioned earlier, the Scratch Labs, the Osmo, and even the one that actually Precision Nutrition, also Precision Hydration, makes as well, and a good amount of sodium in that. So definitely very important. So not only osmosis or across the gradient, but also the active transport system with when you add the right amount of glucose and sodium into the mix. So just summarizing here, the different types of sports drinks and when to use them. We've got, again, the hypotonic, the isotonic, and the hypertonic solutions used for different types of sports or different types of reasons. And I'll sum all that up here. So in summary, the hypotonic solution is good when hydration is priority. And this is the one that definitely is more favored now more than ever, and being able to get other foods in, because you're able to measure the amount of foods. It works really well on the bike, and maybe not as well as in other sports like running and or swimming, but on the bike this can definitely work with hydration and makes it very, very easy to make sure you're hydrated. There's also isotonic. That means it's the same concentration, and that tells us that it's ideal for short duration when carb speed is a priority over hydration. Meaning that you want to get the food, it's ideal. Yes, isotonic is about the same concentration. It's ideal for short duration and high intensity when the carbohydrate speed is a priority over hydration, meaning you've got a short event and you want to get those carbohydrates in. Hypertonic is best for delivery of a lot of calories with no concern for hydration. So you need to hydrate separately if this was your main fueling strategy, and also good for post-recovery. All right, so that kind of sums up what we've got. I'll leave that slide up. This is a good summary slide. We'll leave that up as I answer some questions here that I get. But as far as Discord, it is open for questions. There's only a handful of people in here, but if you've got any questions there, and I will check Zwift Live here for any questions also. So. All right, So it looks good. Nothing here on Discord. I did have a question from Jamel Brown. Where do BCAAs drinks fall in this category? Great question, Jamel. So BCAAs are branched chain amino acids. Essentially, it's a protein broken down into different parts, and definitely actually a really good topic. I'll look into bringing all of that information to the forefront for us in the future. But BCAAs actually do not fall into our hydration strategy, but can fall in our pre and post workout strategies as far as getting those amino acids already pre-broken down for our body to be able to use. The only other case that I've seen that branched chain amino acids can be useful are for long events. So you're talking about 2, 3, 4 hour century ride, grand fondos, and things like that, because having a source of protein on board can definitely be very useful for keeping the body from using or breaking down things like muscle. If the carbohydrate sources are timely enough, then you shouldn't really get to that situation, but having a good basis or a source and it being broken down like in a branched chain amino acid can definitely be of benefit. So really good question, Jamal. If there's any other questions, let me know. Definitely post up on the Zwift Live event here. We've got a lot of good viewers. We had about a good 15 to 20 viewers. So if you have any questions, let us know. Type them up there. Check out Precision Hydration. They actually have an online version of their sweat test that you can do. You can answer questions that can give you an idea of the amount of sodium intake you should have throughout the day and that sort of thing. It also talks about you could also send samples in and get an idea of how much you should get in. But these are a lot of things that you could do, ourselves, and you could test out. And so if you have any questions or anywhere you want to start with, ping me online, send me a message. I could definitely get you started. We've done a lot of the work here. We've got a lot of riders on Team ODZ that are using these strategies and are doing really well with them. So if you have any questions, let us know. So again, check out Precision Hydration. And if you have any topics for in the Feedzone too, like Jamel brought up BCAAs, let me know. We could bring it out to the forefront, like I said, and we can kind of spend some time. If there isn't any other questions, again, thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week in the Feedzone.